Again, Ron Carrico again, this time it's July the 10th, and with Jim Kidrick, and some questions we didn't ask last time. And first of all, we talked about being, I guess you call it the adversary squadron or aggressor squadron up at Miramar against Top Gun.
Right.
What were you flying at the time?
A-Force.
And how long did you do it?
I was, on that tour, I was there about a year and a half.
What would be a typical mission?
Typical mission for us, because we would usually be augmenting Top Gun. They would need more adversary airplanes. So we'd go out against, fleet squadrons that are looking for, select scenarios, whether or not they're coming into a target arena and we're now going to jump them, or whether or not we're going to literally, set up, some multi-airplane engagements.
So most of this took place where?
Most of that either would take place at Fallon, the Naval Air Station up there, especially for ingress to targets where you're trying to jump somebody and engage them.
Not over the Chocolate Mountain Range over there?
Well, Fallon, because remember you do all your air wing training up there. That's why Top Gun's up there now.
Yeah. So in other words, you would leave from Miramar and go up to Fallon to...
Right, but you take off and land out of Fallon.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
great.
Because you could, fuel-wise, you couldn't
Yeah,
couldn't
sure,
do
of
that.
course, yeah.
Now, certainly, we also then did, squadron missions over the Imperial Valley, over the Chocolate Mountain area. But all of Imperial Valley, there's a bunch of airspace, MOA,
Right,
military
sure,
operating areas and restricted areas, as well as Whiskey 291 right out over the water.
Right, right.
We did a lot of stuff right out over the water.
So let's say a mission would be 2 airplanes, fly to an element? Or?
It could be as simple as, for us, augmenting Top Gun, it would be multiple airplanes, but we also provided the service to any of the squadrons, so we could go out on a one-on-one engagement.
Okay, well tell me how would you set up a one-on-one?
We usually take some sort of separation. We may or may not be working with the ship. Sometimes we're working with the ship, that would have both airplanes on radar. But we would just, take separation, and we'd come around so that, 4 or 5 miles out, turn back in, and basically fight was on at the merge if we were doing a head-on.
And you had no radar, but they did.
That's correct.
Typically.
That's correct.
So they could see you, but then you could see the smoke on the F-4s.
Yeah, it finally did change when they went to smokeless engines, of course.
Right.
They weren't as easy to identify because in the old days you could see them coming in and out of burner and all that kind of
So
stuff.
now if you're against an afterburner type airplane, in an A4 you're at kind of a disadvantage, except you could turn better.
Yeah, also our thrust to weight was okay, meaning, the whole intent of an A4, we had 3 different engines in the A4. You had the P6, P8, and the 408.
Numbers again.
Okay, well, and the P6 was kind of the standard T-bird. P8 was a little more power, on the engine, and then a 408, you could be 1-to-1 in a non-afterburning airplane at about probably 3,000 pounds of fuel on board.
Okay, so you're coming right at each other now.
Yep.
And you're coming at probably 400 or 500 knots, so 1,000 mile an hour closure ratio.
Yep.
Now what?
Well, fights on at the merge, you're going to now turn on each other, and essentially it's the dogfight trying to get to a firing solution, whether or not that's a Fox 2. Fox 2 would be a Sidewinder,
right?
Or whether it would be guns.
Now, since you did this a lot, you were probably a hell of a lot better at it than the fleet pilots after a while.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think both sides were good. I don't think, unless you were, out there against a nugget, somebody that was very new to the airplane, because we would also, besides doing, a head-on merge, we would also occasionally just set up on a perch.
Right.
In other words, where we get the airplane roll in on him, and we're going to simulate, remember, not just what an A4 can do, but what he would expect from maybe a MiG-17 or a MiG-21.
Okay, what would be the difference, his expectation?
Well, his expectation depends on which airplane, meaning that from a turn rate, that we would try to simulate the turn rate of the other airplane. Same thing with the acceleration rate of the airplane. So we try to fight it using the characteristics of the enemy airplane.
So a little wider turn weight for the MiG-21, a little less horsepower for the MiG-17, the tighter turn.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
And so the intent was trying to give him a threat replication, not just that he was fighting another Navy pilot in an A4.
What was the minimum ceiling then?
Well, we used the hard deck of 10,000 feet.
That's the term I meant, hard deck. Okay.
Yeah. And hard deck meaning, okay, uncontrolled flight. Okay, meaning that if we were in uncontrolled flight, okay, descending through the hard deck, our procedure was to eject. So if we were in a spin going through 10,000 feet, and basically we were in an ejection scenario.
That ever happened to you?
No. I've been in ballistic flight before, but I've never been in a hardcore spin. We, in the A7, we actually took the airplane out at least once a year with another airplane, and we would take the airplane up to 30,000 feet, and we would depart it, okay, and we use 5 different ways. We do an approach, turn, stall, we do, so that you could replicate all those things that you might encounter. Tremendously violent. When you go up and you take a jet and you purposely put it in an out of control situation, a stalled situation, it's a pretty unique experience, because that airplane is shaking pretty bad by the time it goes, and pretty violent, and of course all the airplanes have different characteristics, for the recovery. Most of them being to neutralize controls, of course, and trim and all that.
Yeah. Now the T-38, of course, it didn't do that. It just, and then the F4, of course, you didn't want to get close to that because of the adversary, you'd be on spinning like
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
And 16,500 feet recovery.
Yeah. Well, they're losing, a minimum of 1,000 feet every time it goes around.
Well, they had when I first started flying in '66, I guess it was, they talked about being just like the T-38, fit on the floor. And then they were losing guys in the brake because it would, you yank too hard, boom, they're underground. So what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was what was cool about going up and literally departing it using 5 different scenarios. Okay, because it kind of taught you, certainly, first of all, the envelope. Okay, where it was, what you would have to do to that airplane. 30,000 feet certainly gave us all the altitude we would need to do a recovery, so it's a safety kind of thing.
Yeah, when being in the back seat, they had these handles for pull the radar out.
Right.
And the front seater probably didn't know it, but I'm like this. They weren't going to move that hell around.
Absolutely.
No way.
I'm sure.
Okay, so typical flight, then in a 2-on-2.
Mm-hmm. We'd enter the arena in combat spread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, 1,500 feet, 60 feet.
4,000 to 6,000 a beam.
Okay.
Okay. That's more of a loose cruise or a cruise.
Right.
So our combat spread was 46,000 feet directly abeam. Okay, so you'd be 90 off with the other airplane. One guy, of course, is lead. The other guy spotting on him. But it's how we would then provide mutual defense, and we would enter the combat arena. And so that we could provide total mutual support. So there's a whole verbiage thing, break right, hard right, calling, right high, 2 o'clock, if you said, I'm visual, meaning that's visual, that's a good guy, bogey,
bandit,
whatever terms you wanted to use. And so it was a good test for everybody, of course, in mutual support and keeping your eyeballs on the bad guys.
Yeah, we did the same thing with spread, and then the idea was to be line abreast, which was really fun when you roll on the other side. That was really fun.
Correct. Well, because you'd have cross turns.
Oh yeah.
Or you come out and you swing, and you'd have the turn in place.
Yeah.
Okay, and so.
So anyway, the thing I'm always curious about is everyone talks about how, okay, you've got a wingman, and the wingman is supposed to be protecting your 6 and somewhere in that cone of 60 degrees, 45 to 60 degrees, 1,500 foot back, things like that. But
Well, in that arena,
But that doesn't really
once
work.
but once you, you know, you go in, there is a lead, but from then on, it's a mutual defense scenario. Okay, so if you know, if we said, let's say that I spotted the target right high 2 o'clock, okay, and I basically said, I'm in, I'm now taking lead,
Okay,
he's
cool.
checking me.
Right.
Okay, likewise, I'd check him.
Right.
Okay, because, you know, once we do those maneuvers, okay, and you know, if you do the crossing maneuver in place, you're both gonna say your 6 is clear, your 6 is clear.
Right.
You know, so, it's really the, you know, the first guy that, you know, puts eyes on the target, okay, because now you can't get your lead's eyes to the target, and if he doesn't see it, you just kind of keep going. You know, you've got to go for the bad guy.
We did some stupid stuff in the Air Force. It was ridiculous. I mean, even not knowing anything, I could see this was stupid. 4 on 4.
Right.
Coming at each other, and then staying like 4 in a row, following each other through the sky. It was ridiculous. Oh, it was, and I'm going, this is really stupid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you come in and I see the bad guy, I'm going to go at him.
Sure.
He now becomes, I'm checking your 6 or whatever maneuver we're doing, or he's going to come, you know, wherever we're going to go. But we're going to, you know, with the first guy who has sight, engage the target.
That makes a lot more sense. I should have been in the Navy.
Well, you got to. Otherwise, if we're rotating and I see the guy, right, and I'm calling mine, you know, he goes, you know, I don't see, you know, no bogey, no visual, you know, well, what do you do? Just keep going while he turns in on us?
There's a guy across the bay over here, William Rogers, Buck Rogers.
Yeah.
He's about 95, 96 years old now. And he flew Hellcats
Right.
from February 44 to June 44. And he shot down a couple of Japanese. And and I was asking about this, you know, unit integrity. He said, it's every man for himself. Once you get into it, it's every man for himself.
Well, that's the thing, you know, we call it a 1v many.
Right.
Okay, and, you know, because once you get into, you know, some scenarios, you know, you're checking front, but you're checking your own 6.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because it's, you know, about the time you get comfortable, okay, there's somebody that's trying to roll in on you, and you have to figure somebody's trying to roll in on you all the time.
Did you ever, one of the military suggestions I made when I was in the Air Force in that little box was to hook up the AIM-7 seeker head, so instead of giving the signal, you know, if you're ready to fire, that, you know, the high-pitched rattlesnake sound, whatever the hell it was.
That's the M9.
AIM-9. Why don't they have that so it broadcasts out, so the other guy can hear that you've got the solution, instead of going back to the bar later on trying to figure out who had who? If you can actually hear it, hear the solution. I don't know if the Navy or Air Force ever did anything about that. I suggested that.
You mean that the bad guy get hurt?
The bad guy would hear it too. So you know that he had a firing solution on
But
you.
he'd have to be on your frequency, or he'd have to be on something,
Sure, why not?
but he won't be on your frequency.
Well, it could be, I guess. Either way.
But he won't be, you know? I mean, he have to be on a radio. So, you know, as it's fed in here, it's a growl.
Yeah, sure. Then you get the high-pitched tone,
No, not with that. Okay, you're thinking now of of the sensing we get, the raw gear we get, okay, which senses the acquisition radar, where it goes into the,
yeah. No, I'm talking about the Sidewinder.
that one is just a constant growl. It's one growl. It's not a,
I think ours went up.
it might have a,
I think I had to change the pitch.
it might have a little bit of a change, but not terrible.
Anyway.
Because, you know, the old adage for a Sidewinder shot was a mile of tone. Okay, because, you know, it had a center blind spot,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because you could put it in the center and sound would go away.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I know.
Anyway, moving on. That's probably all ancient history now.
It is.
So,
Although the AIM-9 hasn't changed much. You know, it's now, you know, by the time we were doing the AIM-9M, you know, that kind of stuff, even me, but, you know, because, you know, they cool the head, of course. They give you a check on the flight deck, you know, to make sure it's all working.
we fired him off of the coast of Tripoli
Yeah.
on towed targets. Never hit a thing. Never hit a thing. At least You know, you hear it and see that sucker go, it was very impressive.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had a 5-mile tow, you know, so you'd miss it, and a radar, easy to lock on, and had a reflector on it. Did we hit anything? No? Well, that was, you were talking 66, 67, early 68. They just didn't work.
The old ones, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, refueling. Refueling an A7, how do you do it?
Well, rendezvous airspeed, about 250 knots, pretty much squadron and air wing SOP.
Pretty slow.
Yeah, but you've got to be slow because much faster. Remember the basket is going to come out of, you know, we had KA6s. Those were A6s designed to be tankers.
Right.
Okay, so they had it coming out of the center of the airplane itself.
Okay.
Okay, then we had a D704, which we called a buddy store. You could put that on an airplane center line, or you could put it on the wing stations.
Right.
We, the A7s, would carry usually 3 drop tanks and a buddy store full of fuel on a tanker mission. So it would be just off center line. So the reason the speed was to keep your tail out of the.
Okay, so you come in at a flight of 2 or 3 or 4,
Right.
and then
Basically,
your lead, go ahead.
yeah, you come in your rendezvous. You know, basically, you know, you give him the signal, you know, or he'll give you the signal that he's going to put the drogue out. He puts the basket out. You know, you'll give him you know, a thumbs up that it's good. I've seen him come out and just never stop. You know, just gone. Somehow get cut off. And then one by one, you're going to come over and you're going to, you know, settle behind, you know, behind the airplane. You're going to bring it up with the A7. Of course, the probe comes out, you know, kind of like this because it sits there just, you know, on your right hand side. It comes out, and of course, it's about straight on when you see you have it in your peripheral vision, because the worst thing you can do during tanking is look at your probe. Okay, and stare at it. You'll become D'Artagnan and you'll start going all over the skies. So you set up at about 10 feet. Okay, I would use the HUD combiner glass, okay, which is, you know, slight angled, thick glass for the heads-up display. The buddy store would always want to be, you know, somewhere in the top 1/4 of that. I would line up at, like I said, about 10 feet, where I thought that if I drive it straight in, it will hit, knowing that there's also a little bit of a bow wave movement, okay? Meaning the basket will have a tendency to move just a little up and away, you know, as we get close to, you know, as it gets closer to the airplane. So you'll, after you've done that lineup, now you want to keep the picture here without looking at that probe tip. And so you're going to drive it in, but you'll know where it is, because now the basket, of course, is going to come up into the field of view here, and your, you know, your probe. So you're going to want to drive in. You'll be making any adjustments just out of the, you know, out of your peripheral vision. Right. And once you get into that 2-3 feet, you know, close in. You know, you'll feel it, you know, want to plug, because it has a retention in it, so it doesn't just pop out. And you'll settle in.
So it grabs the probe a little bit?
Yep. And because you're like popping it in, and then it'll have, like I said, a little, so when you back out, it'll pull on it just a little bit and pop out. And so
to get out, you just pull the power back a little bit and it pops out.
Right. So now you've come in, you've engaged it, and now you're going to slowly push it in, okay, because you need to, it's got an amber light on it on the store. You push it into where he's got a green light, and he turns on the fuel. And now, because you
where's the light in?
It's on the buddy store. It's right on the where the hose comes out.
Okay.
Basically, there's a little amber and a little green light. Okay. When the green light is, you're taking on fuel.
And how much do you take on usually?
1,000 or 2,000 pounds.
Then just have a little, add 0.5% power to bring the RPMs up a little bit to keep it in place, or?
Yeah, just fly forward with them.
Okay.
You know, just fly that.
Night refueling.
Same thing, only just trickier. Got to watch the lights a lot more. The rendezvous is certainly a little trickier. You know, off the ship, typically there was an overhead tanker, you know, on the carrier. But you know, your tanking thing is already going to be pre-briefed, meaning that you know, your mission, he's going to expect you to come up. You know, and maybe there's 2 A7s and we're going to come up and take 1,000 pounds. So that's already been included in his brief, our brief, so we're not a surprise on the tanker.
Okay. Okay, carrier landings. A7. Oh, now you didn't land the A4 in carriers very much.
Not very much, but I did. That was what I initially qualified on.
Of course.
Yeah. And
It was just to start off, is there much difference between the two airplanes coming aboard?
yeah, flying the turbojet engine versus the turbofan, you know, as you and I have talked about before, you're back on the power a little bit on a fan engine, so you're kind of working the accel decel cycle. So the A4 is going to give you a pretty stable platform and a little better engine response, up or down, you know, from the power standpoint. The A7.
So the turbofan engine is not as responsive then?
That's right.
Huh.
Especially when you get back on the power.
So
Okay,
typical,
just like an airliner, you remember how an airliner, you know, spools up and spools down. Okay, it's got a slower wind up, and so we used to jokingly say with the A7 that you were kind of flying the accel decel cycles of the engine, because when you would add power, it never really ever got to the RPM you set it at.
So what would a typical RPM be on landing?
It would be somewhere in the 75 to 80%.
Yeah, I think
to
the F4
85.
was. I think the F4 we always used to figure about 83%,
Yeah.
84% coming.
But
in.
once again, it's a turbojet, good response.
Oh yeah,
Has boundary layer control.
instant response.
Lift on, lift off, kind of thing. The A7, like I said, its challenge was that you would have preferred one more high drag device. You didn't want to roll out in the groove. I would commonly fly a slow to slightly slow turn, so that when I rolled out, okay, versus ever being high and fast,
Right.
okay, that I could initially, work the ball with my nose just a little bit, okay, because all I'm doing is working it into that total on-speed.
Okay, so in the pattern, you're going to fly a downwind and a base
Uh-huh.
to a final, and the downwind airspeed
600
and altitude.
feet, okay,
How many feet?
600 feet,
Okay.
so above the ocean, if you
Right.
will. So, and this is at the ship versus at the shore. As you know, all bases have different downwind altitudes
sure.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but the ship is, come into the break at 800 feet, you're 600 feet of beam, so you're going to, fly to the 135, you're going to be, 400 to 450 passing the 90, as you come through, remembering that the ship is driving away from you. So, like when you do a shore landing, it's not uncommon to move off of the 180 position and then commence your turn. At the ship, you basically commence your turn because the ship's moving that way, okay?
How fast does the ship go?
It's going to try to put about 23 to 27 knots over the deck, okay? So it'll adjust the speed because it's turned into the wind.
So your relative speed coming in is about 100 knots then?
That's correct. An A7 happened to have been at 3,000 pounds of internal fuel, on-speed angle of attack was 130 knots. And it was a 3-knot change for every 1,000 pounds. Amazing, I remember that stuff.
By the way, when I was talking about Ted Treble before, when he first got to our squadron, boy, he crashed a lot of airplanes into it. Well, he was making negative landings, and it took him a while to get used to, just not driving into the ground.
It's really funny. Albeit we were, we were taught to fly, certainly the carrier approach, and we practiced landings a lot. But, if we went on cross countries or, we weren't landing on the ship, we landed, we greased them on, saved the tires.
It took him a while to get used to it.
That's amazing. Seriously, I mean, I didn't think anything. You've seen an A7 or an A4, coming down, aero braking and,
Yeah. I don't think I've seen an A7 in a long time. One time when I was flying March Air Force Base, one Sunday afternoon myself, we're flying around, and suddenly I heard a beeper. So typically we would track the beepers. And it was kind of broken overcast, so we're going towards Oceanside and expecting to see something, nothing. Drop down through the clouds. I keep going on about 10 miles, and here's a guy sitting in a life raft.
Yeah.
And he was an A7 pilot, and he'd been a flight of 2, and something happened. He went down, punched out, And, you know, we flew over. I don't think he had it. I think he was, I can't remember if he was on guard or not, but there was a couple of Navy ships nearby with helicopters operating about 10 miles away. They had no idea he was there. We had to call the ship and say, he got a Navy pilot sitting down out here. That's right, he told us he was an A-7 pilot. And apparently he couldn't talk to the ship, it was too far away or something like that. His wingman had him reporting that he was gone.
Really?
So,
Well, because as you know, when you eject, the ELT goes off, and you have one in the seat.
yeah,
Okay, so as soon as you go up the rails, you know, the locator it
well, they
goes
must
off.
not have been on guard because they had no idea it was there.
Yeah.
Till we
Well,
called.
we fly on TRNG, transmit, receive, and guard, you know, on the radio.
Sure.
So we could, you know, so if somebody did, you know, guard, you know, transmission or whatever. We also carried a PRC 90 on us, you know, which had 2828, you know, SAR
Sure.
Common,
Yeah.
as well as, amazing, I remember this stuff.
Well, and you just reminded me 2820, of course.
Yeah, 2828, and then certainly 2430 for guard and all that kind of stuff. So once you get in the raft, you can transmit, and so he could transmit on guard or transmit on, you know, 2828.
It was very odd. I mean, I could see the ships. Of course, you know, we're at 1,000 feet or so, so they
Right.
could have been 10 miles away.
Absolutely.
But they didn't know it was down. And so I
Right.
called the ship. And then pretty soon I see the helicopters, you know, coming out. So now you're on final.
Yeah, so now
You're
you're on
130
final.
indicated plus or minus or plus 3, you know. Then you pick up the ball. Where do you pick up the ball?
Well, you're gonna pick it up, you know, basically as you come out of the turn. Okay, you know, a typical call, of course, if you're coming in on a straight-in instrument approach, it's 3/4 of a mile, call the ball. So you're right in that 3/4 of a mile to a mile, you know, back of the ship. And the LSO, if you're talking, meaning normal ops, you know, you're gonna come up and say 301 Corsair ball state 3.5. Okay, and he's gonna go Roger ball,
What's 3.5 stand for?
3,500 pounds of fuel.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
you're gonna report your fuel, you're gonna report who you
And so
are.
the LSO is still standing out there,
Oh, yeah,
even though he's just gonna, he could wave you off or whatever, but you're actually flying the ball.
oh, yeah. You're not flying him
Yeah,
at all.
not in the old days.
No, no. And so, so like I said, now that's during normal operation. If you do zip lip, okay, nobody talks. You come in and remember you've taken all your separation, high holding to low holding, all the separations. Nobody's talked at all. And the only thing you'll see is that there's some lights right on the top of the lens, okay? And if you're doing zip lip, when he feels he would be responding to you, Roger ball, he'll punch and that light will come on and come back off,
Oh, wow.
okay? That means he's got you, his eyeballs are on you. If you see that again, okay, that's add a little power. Okay, so if you're in close and you see that one come on, it's
How can you tell? By your angle of attack?
angle of attack, glide slope, you know, in other words, they also have a plat camera there, so they're looking at your glide slope,
Okay.
you know, on camera as well as visually, and they're also looking at your angle of attack. The angle of attack is displayed a little bit differently. So A7, for example, it was on the nose gear door. Okay, so he would be nose gear door, meaning it comes down, it has kind of a flange that faces this way.
Right, okay.
Front of the airplane. And it's gonna have green, amber, and red. Okay, green is slow, red is fast, okay, and amber is on speed. In the airplane, you have the same type indicators. The little, you've seen them before, the little,
Right.
the V, I think the Phantom had them and stuff
we
like
had
that.
the-
That's what we had, same thing. And you probably had them external to the airplane too, I would think. So
Oh, yeah.
we did, okay, and so if you saw in the airplane on speed or slightly slow, he only sees on speed, okay? You have to be all slow for him to see slow. So he doesn't see the slightly fast or the slightly slow, okay? So, and that's just you as a pilot, it just gives you an edge on the queuing. So, Not an uncommon call in close, because remember, you're constantly correcting to the right during the entire landing because of the angled deck, 10 degrees. Remember, you cross the wake and you're kind of coming back at the ship, and the ship is always moving out from you, of course.
Sure.
But it's also moving that would cause you to want to correct right all the time. So, you know, the old adage, meatball, line up, angle of attack, meatball, line up, angle of attack, meatball, line up, meatball, line up, meatball, meatball, meatball. Realizing that you get to a magic moment where everything is within the parameters, okay, and the only thing that, and the thing you need to pay most attention to is the on speed of the airplane. Because if you were to bolter, land long in the wires, out of the wires, the hook were to skip the wires, causing you to boulder, you know, because as you hit, you add full power to the airplane. Because the airplane is flying, will go right back into the air, you rotate, and you fly it away at optimum angle of attack. And there's some reasons for that, of course, and that's if he ever waves you off, causing you to do a missed approach for whatever reason, he waves you off, and you go full power, you fly away at optimum angle of attack. Because the natural desire is to rotate the airplane a little more. Well, what that does is it drops the hook, okay, more, and that's where you would be susceptible if it was an in-close wave up to what we call an in-flight. The hook engages and the main gear aren't hitting at the same time. So it slaps the airplane down. That's bad.
That's bad.
That's bad. So you know, this is a...
so then you just go up to pattern altitude. And
you
try again.
straighten yourself back out a little bit, because remember, you're on an angled deck, so if you did misapproach, you go back, you know, about 10 degrees right.
Right.
Okay, continue up.
What was the most that ever took you to get it on the deck?
Me?
Yeah.
I one time boltered twice.
Wow.
Daytime, tanker, weird conditions, but that was it. I was very fortunate that I landed pretty well.
I think Scott Kelly in his book said he missed it like 4 times in a row.
Yeah, there are people who had their what they call their time in the barrel. Okay, I could still tell you I can remember that day as if it was yesterday. Have no clue why I bolted twice. I would have said I was in the wires. You know, could have been something strange.
So the LSO is still there to wave you off if need be. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Day or night.
Now,
Always somebody on the platform.
so is much difference between day and night?
Yes. It's dark.
Heart rate?
You know, I'm not, I would say your focus is always there. You know, you're aware of the studies they did, you know, for Navy pilots, combat, you know, they hooked them all up.
Sure,
They
yeah.
wanted, you know, combat versus being on the ship, and found that landing on the ship, they were the most anxious, most
Right.
revved up. And really, it's because of, it demands your focus. You know, it's a very disciplined process, and you just gotta, you know.
Well, flying over the ocean at night, it's just so darn dark. You know, it's
totally
scary. It's scary. I remember when I had heard that, but I came out on a cross country as a pilot training,
Right.
and we landed at Los Alamitos,
Right.
and I was in the front seat, instructor in the back seat, and man, when we got over the water, it scared the hell out of the instructor.
Right.
He was really worried about it, you know.
You know, flying over the water, we got pretty accustomed to it, because, you know,
Yeah.
in those days, we did all our war at sea, you know, strike training, you know, we did all it on the deck, okay? You know, there are techniques to flying form, low altitude over anything. You know, if we were a 2-plane and I'm coming in on your wing, okay, you know, we're heading in for whatever it is, and it's not a combat spread scenario, we're going into, you know, whatever the setup is, and I'm flying some sort of a cruise position, which gives you the maneuvering ability, and I'm gonna stay with you. I will never, if I was at 10,000 feet, I'd be here, okay? Over the water, you're stepped
Sure.
up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Never step down below your flight limit.
Yeah.
Okay, because if he turns in, I mean, any number of different scenarios,
Yeah.
you never step down from your lead over, low over water.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because we did lots of that stuff.
And in the rescue stuff, we did a lot right over the water.
Yeah.
Salton Sea, I must have dropped 1 million flares in Salton Sea. We were always over there.
Oh, yeah, we did too.
And every now and then,
Kitty
you'd be
bag.
paying and you see the F-8s go phew by. We used to see them, see the fighters out running low levels.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were usually out in the middle of the lake, someplace.
Yeah, we did, low-level training was a huge, especially in the A7. A7 and the A6 more, okay, simply because that was the way we believed we had to attack.
Yeah, we had a thing called, they got into something called combat rescue at one point. And so,
Well, we did CSAR mission. The A7 has the A7 because of the internal Gatling gun.
right.
Okay, the
That's a
ordnance.
Great Sandy airplane, that's exactly what it's for.
It's
sure.
so we flew that, the egg-shaped, with the helicopter. The idea was, as a two-plane, that the helicopter always had one of our noses in front of him.
Right.
Okay, so, because we had the Gatling gun, great gun, and so we'd be flying, it's a very tiring escort mission,
Yeah.
okay, because you're constantly, pulling the airplane to get it back into position. We did all the hand charts, we prepared all the, the mapping charts, okay, you've seen them, I'm sure.
Oh, I have.
Okay, the
I
flip
got one in my
charts.
closet.
Yeah,
right?
the flip charts. And then, of course, we had, because the A7 had something really, really cool, and that's a projected map display system.
Oh, cool.
The PMDS. The PMDS in those days was in either 20 or 80 mile scale. Okay, so TPC or an ONC, essentially.
Right.
Okay, as, loading the cartridge. And because they could take us around the world, they would just change, what we were going to be looking at. And then the PMDS and the radar, PMDS had right below the radar. Okay, so the radar had scales of 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, I think. Okay, so you
Right,
have
yeah.
the mapping radar, and you could get some air-to-air with it, by changing its tilt and stuff like that. But it was mostly a high-quality mapping because it was also allowing you forward-looking ranging and your weapons delivery. Okay, but because the PMDS was in 20 or 80, that matched 2 of the scales of the radar. Okay, so if you said, okay, I want to put the radar in 80 mile scale, and I've got the map in 80 mile scale, okay, if I saw something on the radar, there was a good chance I could identify it, okay, because I had the map, from a distance, because they just kind of mirror image the
Right.
V. And they were round, okay, but they would give us kind of a targeting V just to kind of, relational, scaled out.
Do you suppose the F-18 has the same sort of equipment now that they had in the A-7, or is that?
I think it has a lot of similar stuff because certainly the mapping, okay, because the mapping capability is just, phenomenal. Most of it, of course, has gone to GPS, okay, because the reason we had what we had, through the IMS and inertial and all that, was to have nothing required external to the airplane, as we talked about the
Right.
other day.
Yeah.
So the airplane required, if I pull off the ship, the airplane's been fed by the ship's inertial nav unit system, so the airplane knows where it is in the world, and we have to now, launch to go after a target 600 miles away. I have a navigation system that will take me that way. It
By the
would,
way,
it would travel anything, hold on a second, what was it? Anything, I don't know, 30 miles or whatever, it would go direct. Anything over, it would travel great circle routes. It was pretty phenomenally
how do you find
sophisticated.
how do you find the ship? The ship is moved. How do you find the ship?
Tack in.
Hmm?
Tack in,
Oh, come on.
most of the time.
Oh, shit. That's no fair.
Well, the ship has ADF and tack in,
Right,
okay, and usually when we went off the cat, we'd push a mark button.
right.
Okay, because remember, we could store 9 different lat-long destinations.
And so from knowing where the ship was gonna be,
We could mark it,
right,
so we know that, okay, the ship, if I just said I'm going back to that mark, the ship's gonna be in a circle of, it only goes so fast, so far, it's
10
gonna be
miles
in
or
that
so,
area.
yeah,
And 9 times out of 10, of course, you know, it's into the wind for the launch. Okay, well, it's gonna come back out on
Right.
some course of where the ship's really trying to go. Well, there's an old joke, a rule of thumb, of course, when you come into the break to your boat, you look down on the bow, and if you don't see your ship number, keep going. Especially if you're working multi-carrier ops.
Yeah.
Don't want to land on another ship. That airplane will have a lot of stickers and paint jobs on it that
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.